Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of dance, film, music, theater, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I am thrilled to be at RH Imagery and excited to have as my guest a visual storyteller who tells more than just moments. He tells emotions. Photographer, Mr. Ryan Harris. Ryan, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Let's get right into it. So, for people who may not be familiar with your work, give a little history about yourself and how you got into photography.
Absolutely. So I've been a professional photographer for a little bit over a decade now. I actually got into it by just simply being gifted a camera. I've always had a passion for photography, always found myself taking photos of something and trying to find a unique approach for anything I took a photo of. And since then, growing into it professionally and, starting a business out of it as well, I've always found the time to kind of make sure I took the photos of the things that really speak to me, and specifically that is actually culture and documenting that.
You made a statement that in 2014, you were granted a camera.
Absolutely.
How did that change your life?
I would say it changed my life drastically because I'm sitting here talking to you today inside of my studio / gallery around all of these photographs that I actually took with this exhibition. So it's definitely changed it a lot. It's taken me to all over, the world with the camera.
So was there a moment when you realized that photography wasn't something that you just enjoy? It was like something that you were called to do?
I would say the longer I began to do it and the more serious I took it, that's when I understood basically, that it's deeper than, kind of just taking a few photos and they're gonna outlive me. And that was what really called me to kind of document things like Black fatherhood and the stigmatism of, us being absent fathers. And I know of my generation, that's not the case. Things like my culture. So I would say there was definitely a pivot when I'm like, I still want to do things for hire. Making money is great. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, what do I want my legacy to be with the camera? And that's when I think that light bulb kind of went off for me.
A photograph, like a lot of times people say a photo is just a photo. But when, in your opinion, does a photo become a story, become something more than just an image that people look at?
That's a great question. I think a photo becomes a story when the photographer has an intention behind it before he even fires that shutter. So typically everything you see and hear, none of this was by chance or me just going on a walk or something. I'm typically going out of my way. If I am somewhere, I'm intentionally, going to shoot this, or I might be driving and see something like, man, I have to document this. Sometimes it could just be the time of day, and it could be something as nostalgic as a car or a sign maybe that I don't think will be here in a week or something. A lot of the times it's not I'll get that next time. The moments don't always happen like that.
Talk a little bit about the exhibition, When the Streetlights Flicker. I mean, I love that title. Talk a little bit about how that came about. What was the inspiration for that?
Absolutely. So this exhibition was very therapeutic for me, meaning that it's rooted in childhood, it's rooted in family. I've had some family members in recent years that, I've lost. A childhood home that I spent, many summers and have so many distant or vivid memories being basically kind of torn down. So it was rooted in me kind of wanting to relive those moments. And the phrase, be home before the streetlights came on is something I was raised by. Being a millennial, I didn't grow up with a cell phone and so much technology like, children and people of today have. So that was our indicator that, hey, it's time to head home. The day is, wrapping up. So I knew that basically, don't let those street lights beat you home. So, as they started to flicker and as you knew the time of day, it was time to be home. And I felt that this work all really kind of stemmed in that. As you see, it's children at play in the community. It reminds you of, midsummer. And I find myself going back to those memories often. And I wanted to basically kind of make them stand still with this exhibition.
Ryan, why do you think people overlook those things like the corner store and the neighborhood and the playground, that nostalgia? Because I'm like that in terms of film. Why do you think it's overlooked, do you believe? Nah.
I would probably say it's overlooked for convenience. Everything these days is Amazon Prime or something of that nature, basically. So right now, I don't think it's the same as when I was growing up, and that was the nucleus and the hub, of the community, basically.
Talk about your feelings of your responsibility in being a Black artist today.
My feelings and responsibility of being a Black artist, especially today, I feel like are very strong. Again, the camera, I love the term from my favorite photographer, Gordon Parks, it's a choice of weapon. Meaning that, you can tell a story with that and you can really create a narrative, whether good or bad, or, obviously I prefer to tell the truth, but there's multiple sides to everything, that are going on, especially in turbulent times. So having that camera and, sometimes being, documenting what's going on. I remember after the unrest of, George Floyd in 2020, and I wasn't even, relatively, it's not like I was super close to it.
Right.
I was, just visiting Columbus weeks after that happened, and you could still see the unrest from the city, from the chaos that ensued there, things that were torn up, and I felt the duty to document that. Like, I lived through this time, despite, how bad it was and how tragic it was. I feel like as a photographer, on good and bad, in regards to this, I find a great beauty of, documenting these Black children because they remind me so much of me. Nothing has changed in the, 30 years since I was their age, and I was, running around outside, and the little boy crossing the street, just trying to get to the corner store. And I actually had a conversation with him. So It's not just a photograph that I took, there's intention behind it. Is like I said, is what makes a photo from, a piece of art, basically. But yeah, his name is Michael, and, him and I chatted, and, I gave him a few dollars to head to the corner store, but it was something about him when I saw him from where I was coming and going from, and he was just, out there running the neighborhood. He had his shirt off, and he just embodied, the little Black boy in the middle of the summer to me. So I feel like capturing these stories is super important, and, for me, I feel like it's a duty with the camera.
Another aspect of your work is time. Why do you think capturing a single moment is so important in your work?
Oh, I think it's beyond important, or it's almost even hard to put words on, just because you're, like you said, with time, that's something that's so precious to me, especially the older I get. We're never gonna get it back.
Right.
So those moments, you just simply don't get to get them back. Like, even when I do work, for hire under a business, I enjoy, taking family photos. Like, obviously some can be more challenging than others, depending on the family, but I understand I'm documenting someone's lineage and legacy. Like this year, when they look back, someone may not be here, or, people are not gonna look the same, everything changes. So, I feel like there's a huge importance in time in photography, because you're essentially making it freeze and stand still in that one moment. And that's what drew me to it, back as a teenager.
I know Cleveland's very important to you. How do you think Cleveland has shaped your identity as an artist?
Oh man, Cleveland has shaped my identity in so many ways. There's a lot of Cleveland in my work, whether it's just in the background of a photo, whether it's something like the vintage signage that I grew up with seeing a lot of Black businesses have, and barbecue places and car washes. Like, I see those things, as I mentioned, and you know, when one catches my eye, I'm like, this is just perfect. You know, these are things that I want to get, you know, photos of, the landmarks here, the history. So it's played a huge part in, you know, shaping me as a person and as an artist.
And I know you received some recognition for Artist Runs the Streets from the city of Cleveland.
Yes.
How did you feel about that recognition?
Oh, that was a great opportunity to be able to showcase my work somewhere as prestigious as City Hall. You know, that was an honor. I've had the opportunity to be in, you know, some great places in the city. So to be able to add that to my resume, I felt that was amazing.
As your career continues to grow, what do you hope it'll take? What direction do you hope it'll take?
Man, as far as direction for my career, I feel like I hope I can continue to be my authentic self. I think that's the best way to put it, not be compromised. So experience growth, but also still continue to tell the stories that I want to tell. I would love to get into a place where, you know, I'm actually able to do this, you know, for my full living. So that would be, you know, a true dream ideal for me.
When people leave, what do you hope they'll take from when the street lights flicker?
When they leave this, I hope, like with any body of work that I put together for an exhibition, people see a little bit of themselves. If you're not from my culture, you learn a little bit about the culture and just have an appreciation for it. So I think regardless of inside of the culture or from another culture, just have an appreciation for it. I think that would be the best thing.
And finally, sir, what do you hope your legacy will be, Ryan Harris?
My legacy, I hope it will be someone who contributed to the fabric of not only Cleveland culturally as an artist, but just a great person all around. I didn't want to box that in as a friend, a brother, a father, just a great person all around that, you know, people always saw with a camera and was always taking some form of a picture. And that these pictures, at the end of the day, when people reflect back on them 50 to 75 years from now, I would have done whatever I was taking a photo of justice.
Well spoken, sir. Ryan.
Yes.
Rapid fire.
All right.
Canon or Sony?
Canon.
Sunset or sunrise?
Sunset.
Black, white, or color?
Black and white.
Cleveland's best landmark?
You got me with that. Peter Pan sign.
Best advice you ever received?
Keep going.
What's the most Cleveland photo you've ever taken?
The most Cleveland photo
Cleveland
I've
photo
ever taken. Wow, that is a good one. I should have it. The landmark Peter Pan sign.
One word that describes Cleveland through your lens.
Unapologetic.
So you know, I gotta ask you about that.
Okay, absolutely.
That's my history right there. That's my history.
Oh yeah, I mean, a milk crate on the, what would you call that, on the, not the street light, on that column or that post.
Oh, right.
Even though it's not something I want to say, I probably grew up actually shooting. I saw them so much that and we don't see them now really at all. It definitely just speaks to me like that. That is kind of the epitome of basically like, hey, we're gonna have fun out of what we have. And I did grow up that way, so that's why that speaks to me so much, just because it's a part of our culture and our fabric.
Yeah, because I can remember the street lights lit
that up, right.
Lit the basket up.
If you could ball on that, you really had something.
That's right. East Side Market. Talk about that.
Yes.
Big Caddy. I wonder if that's the owner's car.
So the East Side Market was a market and a place that I frequented often, as this was 5 minutes, if that, in a car from my grandmother's house, where I spent a lot of time, you know, and a lot of summers growing up as a kid.
Right.
So when I rode past this a few years back, And the fact that it was still standing and still had the original signage, and that it had this Cadillac that literally was around when I was a child, I had to pull over immediately and grab this photo. And it was just the Cadillac, like wasn't a Kia next to it, wasn't anything else. Like, this is one of those things I was telling you where you don't always have the opportunity to say, oh, I'll get it tomorrow.
So you always have the camera with you?
Pretty much, yeah.
So wherever you go, if you see
I have some form of a camera with me, yes.
So you can just stop and take a shot.
Exactly.
A shot of life.
Exactly.
Young man.
This is Lil Mike. Lil Mike, you know, this picture speaks to me so much, just from the eyes to the way that, you know, I shot this and his shirt being off. You could tell it's the dead of summer. And he just epitomizes basically a little black boy in the summertime, just basically trying to find, you know, his next dollar to go to the corner store and just having fun when, you know, the world is just at his feet. And, you know, he's at a pivotal age where, you know, there's still innocence there. So everything about this just spoke to me so much. And again, me and him had a conversation, explaining to him I was a photographer and I was literally coming and going from one of my favorite places, Comfort CLE. So I was grabbing some lunch, and I'd actually seen him in there before as well. Like he's a neighborhood kid. Okay. So this wasn't my first time seeing him, but this time, you know, I stopped him and shared with him I was a photographer, and, you know, if he was comfortable with it, you know, I would love to just get a photo of him. And, you know, he was like, sure, no problem. And I told him also, you know, had a couple dollars for him, you know, just to help him throughout the day. That made his day, and he went about his way down there and headed to the corner store. I'm Ryan Harris, and I'm gonna show you what's in my bag. Starting with the camera, Canon R5, must. One of my favorite lenses, 24-70 f2.8. Probably use this the most. Next favorite lens, 70-200 f2.8. If I'm not using that, chances are I'm probably using this one. Another slept on prime lens, 85mm 1.2. This is a beautiful lens, but it's just not called for in every circumstance. What else we got in here? Let's see. My most underrated piece of gear ever, let's see. I will probably have to say my speed light. This light is super powerful. So if I'm somewhere and there's not a lot of natural light, or typically if I'm shooting an event, I'm gonna pull this out and it's gonna take the photo from okay to amazing. One item I never leave home without, super simple. Memory cards. Weirdest item in my bag. This is what you blow dust off of your lens or your sensor with, because you definitely don't want to touch certain things on these cameras or on your lens, or it'll be pretty bad. And this is what's in my bag.
Ryan Harris reminds us that the best images begin with a thought, connections, and a purpose. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for TV 20. We are Cleveland and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time, be well, be safe.